Okay, so this is like the 8th time I've recorded this, so I'm sorry if I sound a little aggravated. So, this is a full in-depth guide on ganking, whether from the jungle perspective or the laner's perspective. I'm going to talk about general pathing, scenarios. Not really going to talk through scenarios too much because every game's a little different, every player's a little different. These are things that you're going to have to learn in practice. I'm going to talk through some of the more ways to set up a gank, ways to pull off a gank, lane states, and a few other things that you want to keep in mind whenever we're talking about ganking a lane. Now, for those of you who do not know what ganking a lane means, this is typically where either jungle, mid lane, or some other player on your team comes out of the jungle and attacks the lane to help either gain a kill or create a more favorable laning state. Now, my general pathing is typically from base to red, raptors, blue, into scuttle. This is a standard pathing. Some people do a full red, some people do a full blue. We will talk about placement of wards to help kind of notify you on which direction they might be coming from and how they might be pathing around their jungle clear. But the important part is say you're at scuttle now. You have your mid laner and you have your top laner, whether that be your Baron lane or your Dragon lane, doesn't really matter. So typically, I like to push the Scuttle Crab in the direction of mid lane. This facilitates a few major reasons. So first off, a majority of players will put a ward here for the bot lane or for the lane, whereas the mid laner will put one here or here, right? These are the most common ward positions in the early part of the game. These are also really bad ward positions in case you didn't already know. Generally speaking, whenever I come out here, the moment I hit the Scuttle Crab, right around here I will activate my trinket. That way I don't get seen by wards here or here. This is actually really important, so I know whether or not the laners can see me. Now let's say you don't activate your trinket and you push the crab this way. This actually does something for you that's really, really important, and that is it deceives the laners. It makes them think you're moving away from them instead of towards them, especially if they never see you pop up in this area. Right? So they will think you've gone toward mid lane and then worked your way back through the jungle at some point because they just don't know where you are. Instead, when I've killed the crab right around here, what I like to do is I'll take a look at the mid lane. What's the mid lane state? Is it viable for me to jump on them or is it not? And we'll kind of talk through that determination here in a second. So then normally what I'll do is I'll come up here and I will hit the plant in this direction. This will give me view of this entire section of the jungle. It will tell me, have they taken the red? In other words, did they do a full blue side clear? Did they take their Krugs? And this is important information for me. At that point, once I am certain that there are no wards here, 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 or here, then I change my pathing accordingly based on what vision they do have and what vision they do not have. I will then come up, around, or come through and around. Now, something to keep in mind is that I'm talking about Wild Rift. This is not PC League, and that this section of the jungle actually doesn't exist right here. The Krugs are actually right here. So, I'm sorry, I couldn't exactly find a Wild Rift map to do this on. And that's part of the reason why this is the way it is. But most of the time, I'll come through here and up to Krugs, and I will pull them using whatever ability I can or a basic attack toward this bush right here. If I'm right here, then the laners who are right here cannot see me. They can't see me, which means they're less likely to do anything about me. I can take the Krugs safely. They can't do anything about it. I win. Now, the entire time that I'm clearing the Krugs, I'm paying attention. Sorry, didn't mean to mark there. I'm paying attention to the wave state. Where the wave's at. Where my laners are at. What their laners are at. Health totals. What abilities they're using. When they've used those abilities. These are all really important factors whenever you're talking about ganking a lane. Now, let's say you finish Krugs. You can then path here if they're trying to backport, like right here, and they're really low health. You can come down and into lane if they're overextended. Or you can simply go back through the tri-brush, through the river, back into your jungle, and up to your frog in order to try to continue your jungle clear. This is up to you. It depends on where the wave states are at and what the chances of you ganking them are. Now, let's talk about wave positions a little bit. So let's say you're right here. The wave state's here. Your champions are here. Their champions are trying to backport right here. You can ping and try turret dive. Now, turret dives are typically like anytime you have to go under turret. Now, I don't really consider it a turret dive if it's you just coming under enough to get a quick double kill with either an axe and your third ability, or like Pantheon's jump and his spear. It's up to you. It depends on your champion. You know their capabilities and what you can do. This is a very easy one. Now, the most favorable is that. You come out, you get a quick double kill because they're backporting and they're like no health at all. And easy peasy. You back off back into the jungle and try to path toward your blue side. The next favorable position is, say, the wave state is here. Enemy laners are here, and your wave is, if I could ever get this thing to go away, like over here. You get what I'm trying to say. Your laners are under tower. Okay? You can immediately path through or even around. It depends on where you want to go. In most cases, I would go through the lane because they have to go through you in order to get back to their safe place. Now, some people are smart and they'll go upriver. Some people are not. It just kind of depends on them. But that's another ganking option. Another is, say, the wave state's neutral. This is actually one of the worst case scenarios, and they're fairly healthy. You can still gank. I just wouldn't really recommend it. It just kind of depends. Now, let's say that instead you're right here. You've just finished clearing. You're coming from the river. Say wave state's neutral. You can come up and around, or you can just go straight. Now, this is the same concept whether they are middle lane like that or minion waves like right here. Doesn't really matter in that sense. If you're coming from the river, you can either come from the river like this or up and around like this. How you determine this? From the river is they can see you. In other words, you want to get there and get them as fast as you can. Going up through the tri-brush and around as if they cannot see you, because you want them to be lulled into the sense of security, and you want to get behind them and flank them. This is really, really important. It is very important to kind of keep that in mind. Now, how can you, as the laner, both facilitate or create ganking opportunities or avoid ganking opportunities? Well, before I talk about that, let's talk about ability usage. Things to keep in mind. Say you're a Pantheon. Turret diving is a little bit easier because you can just hop on your opponent and get out a quick damage combo before they really get a chance to do much back to you. People like Olaf have to be a little bit more careful because it's easier for them to just run through turret range and just kite you. Turret diving requires a lot of cooperation from both you and your allies to get successfully. Turret dives, especially in the early game, should only be done if the wave state is crashing into their turret. This way the minions will pull some of the aggro for you. You need at least one other champion to join you. The goal is to juggle turret aggro between you, your allied champion, and the minions as much as possible so that you take the least damage as you can. Lee Sin can do this a little bit more freely because he has the abilities to kind of jump out of turret range kind of last second if he needs to. But not everybody really has that kind of slippery nature. So this is, again, where you're going to have to figure out what your limits are as a jungler based on what your jungler is good at. Now, I play a lot of Olaf. I know he gets kited really easily. So these are things that I have to keep in mind. Is the enemy a Lux? Has she used her binding recently? In Baron lane, is it a Pantheon? Has he used his jump stun recently? Darius, has he used his axe pull recently? These are things I have to keep in mind. Like, did I see them use it? Alright, so these are the kinds of things you really need to pay attention to. You know, have they used CC abilities? Can they kite you easily? Do they have dashes available in the cases of like Lucian? This is a process that is going to require time, planning, and a lot of trial and error. You have to figure out what your jungler is good at, what other champions can do to you, what champions are really bad to just gank freely without really considering what they can do. So how to avoid these kind of weird ganks is to just, well, practice. Every champion's a little different. Every champion interaction's different. Every lane is different. People use abilities at weird times. It's not something you're going to be able to inherently know. You're going to have to practice. Now, as a laner, how do you keep in mind jungle position and things of that nature? Now, let's say we're at the minute 35 mark. They've just killed the scuttler. How do you facilitate a gank? So let's say we're top lane here. Well, say wave state's here. You're both right here, so on and so forth. Only last hit the minions. What this is going to do is it's going to intrinsically move the wave state this way. So that eventually it will look more like, well, this. This makes it easier for your jungler to come in, and you basically turn around at about the point where he hits either here, if he goes around, about the point they get here. This is about the point where you want to turn around and start pumping in damage into the enemy champions. And at about here, or here, you want to go ahead and land your CCing abilities. This guarantees pretty much an instant kill. Or you can push wave state under turret to try to force a turret dive. Now, it really depends on what the wave state is, what the lane up matching is, and so on and so forth. But these are things to keep in mind. Now, let's say you're at the bottom of the map. Most of the time, the enemy jungler will be ganking the bottom side of the map. So how do you avoid getting ganked? And how do you know where the enemy jungler is going to be? Well, some easy ways to do this is to place a ward about right there. And do it after about 30 to 45 seconds. So it's almost guaranteed to be alive. You will see them path down here toward that scuttler at about 1:25. So you know they're in this area. And at about 1:30 to about the 2-minute mark, they're going to be looking to make a gank. How do you avoid this? Well, let's say the wave state is neutral or over here. Well, the easy way is to, well, the same tactic as with the top lane. You just last hit minions and allow the wave to push here if it's in the center. Or push your wave under tower so that it resets, and then try to do the same. And try to pull this way. Another way is at about the 2-minute mark, make the wave state neutral, and then backport. They can't do anything to you if you're in base. At that point, they're either going to sit here and then waste time putting themselves behind just to get a kill, or they're going to be smart and they're going to go back up river toward mid lane or toward their jungle to try to get farm and try to get kills, thus leaving you alone. This is actually really important to keep in mind whenever you're doing these sorts of plays. And as a laner, it's incredibly important to think about these sorts of things. I talk mostly about the 1 minute 25 mark to the 2 minute 25 mark, because this is where a lot of your early ganks are going to happen. It's where a lot of your junglers either get ahead or fall behind. It is an incredibly important part of the game, because junglers like Olaf, this is how they get rolling. This is how they get ahead. This is how they win the game, is because they get these easy kills off of people just not paying attention to the game state or the wave states, and they just snowball from there. These are really important ways to shut champions that snowball down. This is really important ways to shut down the Evelyns, to shut down the Olafs of the game, who want that early kill to make sure that they stay ahead the entire game and can just continuously create a game state that is favorable for them. I hope you guys have learned a lot. I feel like I've talked through a lot of different things. I know we kind of went over laning, we went over pathing, we went over some of the things to keep in mind. Granted, this is something you're going to have to practice, and to keep these kind of fundamentals in mind. Whenever you're in lane, start paying attention to that 1 minute mark to 2 minute mark, and see if you can kind of gauge where the enemy jungler is, and try to gauge about, hey, how should I be doing this? How can I make it impossible for the enemy to do anything to me? And just kind of keep this kind of stuff in mind. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps.